I paid for the venue. But apparently, I don't belong in the building. The envelope was gold, thick, elegant, the kind you send to foreign diplomats or kings. My name was on it, but I wasn't in it. I ran my fingers over the foil lettering on the wedding invitation like I was reading Braille, searching for something, anything that said I mattered. Nothing. No mention, no thanks, not even a line like "with love from both families." Instead, it said, "Hosted with love by Susan Monroe, mother of the bride." Susan, a woman who hadn't raised Lily, who didn't teach her how to ride a bike or sit beside her in ERS at midnight. Susan, who entered the picture the year Lily turned 22 and had been playing houseguest ever since. I blinked. Then blinked again, because shock does that. It makes you think maybe if you read it a second time, the lie will correct itself. It didn't, single quotes. Marianne, glossy AF, is that gold foil? I stared at her text. I could still feel the weight of the envelope in my lap, like it was mocking me, like it knew it was beautiful and brutal. Me. Got it, beautiful. That was all I wrote. I opened my desk drawer. Inside was a faded yellow receipt. I unfolded it slowly, careful not to tear the edges. There it was, my signature. $23,400, paid in full, non-refundable deposit. The venue, the Glass Hollow, the very same place where this magazine-spread wedding was now being held, under Susan's name. A breeze from the window stirred the corner of the receipt. It flapped softly, like even the paper couldn't believe it. I called Lily. She answered on the third ring, cheerful. "Hi, Mom. I got the invitation. A beat. Just one. And isn't it gorgeous?" Susan worked so hard on it. She knows all the traditional wording. Traditional wording. I looked down again at that line. Susan Monroe, mother of the bride. No asterisk. No in addition to. No mention of me. So, it's just traditional, I said, quietly. Yeah, you know how it is. Formal stuff. Nothing personal. She laughed lightly, as if I'd asked whether they were serving salmon or chicken. Right, nothing personal. After we hung up, I stared at my laptop screen for a while. The RSVP site was clean and modern, with soft piano music playing in the background. I clicked yes, I'll attend. Because that's what ghosts do. They haunt. They show up anyway. Then I shut the laptop and stared into the black reflection of the screen, and saw myself. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared, not at the woman I was, but the one I'd become. A figure in the background of her own daughter's story. What happened next changed everything. If you've ever been written out of a story you've built with your own hands, tell me where you're watching from. You're not alone. My breath caught, not from sadness, but something sharper, like a paper cut across the soul. Maybe I didn't belong in the photo montage, or in the first dance, or in the wedding vows, but I'd built this, brick by emotional brick, and someone had just locked me out of the house. I constructed. Well, if I wasn't the mother of the bride. Let's sing gold quotes, as see who I have to be instead. Not the dead that haunt you, it's the living who pretend you were never there. They put me in the guest room, the same house I once called home, and I got the room with the single lamp, no closet hangers, and floral sheets that still smelled like starch and lavender. Not memories. There was something insulting about it, not loud, not cruel, just quiet disrespect, the kind that tastes like sugar but rots your teeth. Joanne greeted me at the door with that rehearsed smile. Too wide, too slow, like she was trying to remember what I looked like before time and grief had rearranged my face. She said, "You got in early." I said, "It's still my house." She laughed. I didn't. Casey barely made eye contact. She offered me tea, then disappeared behind the French doors with Joanne, like we were in a play and I was the character no one was allowed to acknowledge after Act 1. Their voices dropped. But walls here still remember. You think she knows? I doubt it. She was just convenient. Just convenient. The woman who signed mortgage papers while her husband was in hospice. The woman who planned every birthday party, every casserole drop-off, every graduation speech. Convenient. I walked into the hallway. Every step a dare. The photo wall had changed. Lily and Caleb in frame after frame. But the wedding photo, my wedding photo, had been pushed to the sideboard, half-shadowed, dust lining the frame like a warning. This doesn't belong anymore. I picked it up gently. Robert looked young. I looked alive. Our hands were touching in the picture now, cold against the glass. I didn't put it back. David's old office was down the hall. They hadn't touched it. That told me more than any speech could. The doorknob resisted at first, stiff with years of silence. I twisted harder. It gave way with a soft click. Inside, stillness, dust, a printer that hadn't hummed in years. The air smelled like old books and pine-scented floor polish. Like him, on the desk sat a single envelope, cream-handed dressed, faint smudge on the edge, like it had been held, thought over, maybe even kissed. It said, "For Rachel, my name," in his handwriting. I would have known that or anywhere. It looped like a violin bow, confident, gentle. The ink was faded, but still there. I sat in the worn leather chair, his chair, and held the letter like it might vanish. But I didn't open it, not yet. What do you do with proof that someone remembered you when the world is trying to forget you ever mattered? I stayed in that office for over an hour, not reading, not moving, just ... listening to the silence, to the ghost of his voice, telling me what I already knew. They were trying to erase me, and Robert, in his last quiet act, had left me a pencil mark in the margin, a whisper through time. I slipped the envelope into my purse. No announcement, no scene, because I've learned something in this house. When people pretend you don't exist, you don't scream. You remember, you collect, you wait, and when it's time, you return the favor. I sat at the end of the brunch table, dressed like I belonged, but I might as well have been the wallpaper, silent, faded, and chosen by someone else. Susan Monroe held court at the head of the table like she'd invented motherhood. Every story was edited, every detail curated. When Lily was 6, she said, she insisted on wearing ballet slippers to the grocery store. I let her, of course, always let her be free. I nearly choked on my tea. When Lily was 6, I carried her through 3 ear infections, taught her how to tie her shoes, and held her hand when she cried about her father's absence. Susan wasn't even on the Christmas card list back then. The woman beside me leaned in, laughing too hard. She's such a natural storyteller. Natural wasn't the word I'd use. I reached for the butter knife, then stopped. A single white rose sat in a tiny glass vase beside my plate, soft, flawless, and fake. Just like the rest of this scene. Lily sat 2 seats away, nodding, smiling, chiming in when it was safe. Not once did she glance in my direction. I wondered if her neck hurt from avoiding me. "She's distracted," Marianne whispered. She was next to me, quiet and sharp as ever. "They've scripted this whole thing." I wanted to argue. I wanted to say it wasn't true, but I looked around the table and saw it. Every napkin folded into perfect fans, every chair placed at a calculated angle, every story rehearsed to erase a different one. I wasn't Rachel, her mother. I was the guest. One of Caleb's aunts turned to me, squinting like I was a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. "I'm sorry, how do you know the family again?" It took everything in me not to laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was the first time I realized how good they were at this. I swallowed my answer and folded my napkin in half. "That's a long story," I said softly. I didn't wait for dessert. I stood up, left my untouched lemon tart, and walked out with my purse clutched to my ribs like armor. I didn't look back. I sat in the car. Windows rolled down. The smell of rosemary from the garden drifting in like a memory that hadn't been invited either. I didn't turn the engine on. I didn't cry. I just waited for the ache to settle, for my name to feel like mine again. That night, a message arrived. No sender ID, no greeting, just words. "You're not wrong." Attached was a photo, grainy, cropped, a corner of a dinner table. Susan Monroe and Caleb's father, smiling, too close, too familiar. And she wasn't wearing her wedding ring. My hand tightened around the phone. I looked at the screen until it went dark. My reflection ghosted over theirs. If they thought this game was about image, they were forgetting one thing. I was the one who taught Lily how to see beyond the frame. And I still had the negatives. Some truths wear tulle, some lies wear pearls. The dress was supposed to be my olive branch, my silent offering in a war no one would admit was happening. I'd come to finalize the payment. What I found instead was a transaction already closed. The girl at the front desk smiled with too many teeth. "Oh, that's all taken care of. Susan Monroe called in last week. Full balance cleared." I paused mid-blink, my hand still in my purse, fingers curled around the check I'd written that morning. "Are you sure?" I asked, slowly, calmly. She turned her screen toward me. There it was, $7,800 marked, paid in cheerful green font, billed to something called the Silver Harbor Family Foundation. The name rang in my chest like a dull bell. I'd heard it before, but not in bridal context. I'd just like a receipt for my records. I said dot. The assistant nodded and clicked away. I stood in silence as the printer began to churn. Behind her, Lily's wedding dress hung in a mirror-lined room. White lace, hand-beaded, romantic and ridiculous, a reflection of someone else's story. The assistant handed me the invoice and added, "Susan said you were out of the picture." Then she smiled again, like she hadn't just stabbed me with my own absence. I took the paper. My hands were steady, my voice was not. "Thank you." I left without touching the dress. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with the receipt flat in front of me, a glass of Merlot untouched beside it. My laptop hummed quietly. I pulled up the foundation's name and began digging. The name popped up in an article from 5 years ago. Corporate grants, real estate, some charity work, and then buried in the footer of an old board report, a list of affiliations. There it was, Chairman Thomas Calder, Caleb's father, and below that, a list of silent donors. One of them, a now dissolved LLC that David once refused to work with. I remembered the fight we had in the garage about it, how Robert had walked in and said, "We don't partner with shadows." I stared at the screen. The payment hadn't come from Susan, it had come from Susan's sponsor. This wasn't generosity, it was leverage. I sat there for a long time, not typing, not clicking, just breathing. That same numbness again, like watching your reflection blur in glass just before it shatters. How much of this wedding was real? How many of them knew? Lily, Caleb, even David. I ran my finger along the printed edge of the invoice, sharp enough to cut. I wanted to bleed, just to prove I still felt something. Instead, I folded it once, then again, then slid it into the folder. I'd marked receipts that matter. Back in the closet, my dress still hung, untouched, black, sleek, discreet. A mother's compromise, bought before I realized I wasn't meant to be seen. But now, I traced my fingertip down its seam. Maybe it wasn't about being seen. Maybe it was about seeing clearly, for the first time. If Susan was wearing pearls, then I'd wear armor. This wasn't a wedding, it was an arrangement. And I wasn't attending as the mother of the bride anymore. I was attending as the only woman in the room who still had something to lose. The table was set for two, but Susan came instead. I'd reserved the corner booth, the one by the window with the crooked candle that always flickered like it knew secrets. I asked for the same wine Lily loved at 15 before she pretended to hate sweetness. She walked in 10 minutes late, and Susan walked in right behind her. My jaw tightened, but I smiled. A mother's reflex. Always perform, always host, even when uninvited guests sit at your table. Susan kissed the air beside my cheek. "We wouldn't miss this. Lily was just saying how lovely it is to catch up." Lily didn't say anything. The waiter approached, eyes darting to the empty chair. I'd angled just for us, ready to order. I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. Susan spoke like she was narrating a wedding catalog. "The flower wall is being flown in from Milan. The harpist, vegan, of course, plays only in 432 Hz for spiritual harmony. Isn't that just precious?" Lily stirred her water. I folded my napkin, square and neat, and tried to find my daughter in the silence. Her smile was stretched too wide. Her eyes didn't land anywhere for long. Then Susan added, as if mentioning the weather, "Of course. Everything's already been handled. Caleb's family insists on a prenup, legacy reasons. You know, legacy." That word tasted like rust in my mouth. I turned to Lily. "How's the venue coming along? Any issues with Susan?" "Cut in, handled." She said it the way a woman zips a suitcase, tight, final, with everything she thinks she needs. The waiter returned with a bottle of wine. "Compliments of Mr. Calder. He said you'd appreciate the vintage." I stared at the label. 2001, the year Lily was born. Susan beamed. "Thomas is so thoughtful. It's important to honor beginnings." My fingernail dug into the menu. A small tear opened at the edge, silent, but there. Lily stood abruptly. "Excuse me," I single quotes tired. She didn't wait for us to protest. Her chair scraped the floor as she walked out, purse swinging, heels too loud. We watched her leave. Then Susan leaned in, like we were old friends sharing secrets. "You should be grateful," she whispered, "that you were even part of her story." The candle beside me guttered. I looked at her, then smiled. Not the smile I used when Lily won spelling bees. Not the one I saved for Robert's bad jokes. No, this one was older, wiser, weathered by survival. Let's see how it ends, I said, quietly. Then I picked up the glass and drank every drop. There are 3 fathers in this story. One dead, one powerful, one silent, and none of them asked what Lily actually wanted. I told Marianne I was just reviewing my own estate, a casual check-in, nothing urgent. But I wore perfume to the meeting. David's lawyer, Mr. Keene, still kept tissues in the same spot, right side at the desk, underneath the blotter. Like grief was a stain he expected women to bring in on their sleeves. You're still listed as executor, he said, flipping pages without ceremony, until she's married. Then the role defaults. Defaults to who? He hesitated. Well, Caleb. Eventually, the word hit me like a draft in an old house, quiet but cold. When I got home, I opened David's desk drawer for the first time since he died. The key had always been kept in a small, ceramic bowl, the one Lily made, in 3rd grade, glazed turquoise, a wobbly heart etched into the side. It still smelled faintly of cedar and ink. The lock stuck, then clicked. Inside, a folder, thick, labeled in David's handwriting, Lily Truss. A yellow post-it was stuck to the front, slightly curled from time. It read, "Only if necessary." My throat tightened. He never said much in his last year, but when he did, he meant every syllable. I carried the file to the dining table and laid it out next to my cold tea. The light above flickered twice, then held. Clause 3C, subparagraph 4. No trust disbursement shall proceed if third-party influence or external fiduciary control is evident at or prior to legal union. I read it again, then again. It wasn't just a clause, it was a warning. I called Marianne. "She's already under their thumb," I said. "And you're still her mother," she replied. "Act like it." I didn't answer. Instead, I watched the way the spoon in my cup leaned sideways, like it had surrendered. "She hate me if I interfere," I whispered. "She lose herself if you don't." I didn't sleep that night. I folded the post-it in half, then into a triangle, then again, until it was small enough to disappear. But it did single quotes t'd not really. The next morning, I opened the laptop, pulled out a flash drive from the drawer, the same one I used to store Lily's baby photos, back when memories felt like anchors, not evidence. I copied the trust folder onto it, slow, deliberate. One progress bar inching forward while my hands stayed still. When it finished, I renamed it, Only Truth. The words looked strange on the screen. Naked. Final. I slid the drive into the drawer beneath the ceramic bowl, closed it, didn't lock it, then sat there, in silence, not grieving, not plotting, just, becoming someone else, the kind of woman who doesn't flinch when the house creaks. Because now, the ghost's answer to her "no one" smiles more convincingly than the one planning to cut you out. At Lily's bridal shower, the women wore pastels and pearls like armor. Laughter floated like perfume, light but cloying. A table spilled with imported macarons in gift bags that weighed more than honesty ever did. And there she was, Susan. Her lipstick was the shade of a closed door. She held the box like a secret she'd been saving for years. "I thought this belonged with family," she said, and handed it to Lily like a queen bestowing her kingdom. Lily opened it. Inside, the necklace, gold, curved like a sigh. The one David gave me on our 10th anniversary. The one I hadn't seen in 6 years. Gasps rose from the crowd like steam. "How beautiful," they said. "How thoughtful," I smiled, like women do when they're swallowing glass. Lily gave a stiff thank you and hugged her shoulder only, eyes low. Not once did she look at me. I stood near the mimosa bar, still forgotten. Marianne drifted over, lips barely moving. She met with Caleb's father again, alone. The word "alone" dropped like ice down my spine. My hands stayed at my sides. My jaw didn't. I scanned the pile of gifts beside the stage. Logos, designers, sponsors. It wasn't a shower. It was a catalog shoot with applause. Not one gift had handwriting. Just ribbons, receipts, and barcode stickers. Modern love language. Later, after the guests left, I slipped the necklace box into my purse. Susan had left it on the counter, like it had always belonged there at home. Under real light, I opened it again. The receipt was still tucked beneath the velvet insert. Lawson and Keller. The Calder family firm. Date, last month. I laughed. Once. Quiet. The sound of something giving way inside. Not grief, recognition. They were rewriting the past and hoping I wouldn't notice the ink still wet. I took a photo of the receipt, then deleted my RSVP from the wedding portal. Click. Just like that. No dress code, no seat placement, no silent blessing from the sidelines. I stared at the flash drive on my desk. Only truth, then at the RSVP confirmation that now read cancelled. Same hand, different woman. I picked up my phone and typed, dinner. Just us. Sent it to Caleb.no. Emo, JIS. No explanation. Let him wonder what I know. Let him taste what it's like to be watched from the edges. The necklace box sat open beside me, velvet dark like a bruise. And I thought, not everything that sparkles is heirloom. Some things are, just borrowed long enough to bury the truth beneath. He thought it was just dinner. I knew it was a stakeout. I chose a quiet restaurant, dim lights, no background music, a place where the clink of a wine glass could sound like a confession if you waited long enough. Caleb arrived on time, sleeves rolled, tie undone, the look of a man trying to be casual in a conversation that wouldn't be. He smiled. I returned it, but mine had more history in it. I poured him a glass of red, let it breathe between us, then asked about the honeymoon. His eyes lit up. Greece, first stop, then maybe Prague. I nodded. Sounds expensive. He laughed. Easy. Luckily, the family's generous. There it was. A door, left slightly ajar. I walked through it. Speaking of family, I twirled my glass by the stem. David always wanted Lily to have her own money. No strings, no signatures, just a clean start. Caleb sipped. Totally. That's why my dad structured the prenup the way he did. Clean entry, financial, clarity, no entanglements, it's fair. Clean entry. The way you describe a merger. Or a sterilized wound. I let the silence settle, then asked. Susan helped with that. He blinked too fast. Ah yeah, she connected some dots. Smoothed things out. Funny, I said softly, how she reappeared right on time. His smile tugged sideways, then vanished. For a moment, he looked younger than he was. Like a boy realizing his inheritance came with ghosts. He cleared his throat, changed the subject. But I'd already heard enough. That night, back home, I opened the trust folder again. The same yellow light above the table. The same ceramic bowl holding the flash drive. The same sentence staring back at me in David's handwriting. Clause 13. Any sign of external influence shall nullify the trust prior to legal union. I highlighted the line, then printed it. The page still smelled like toner, sharp, industrial, like it didn't want to be touched. I folded it, slid it into a fresh envelope, marked it to be used only once. I stood in the kitchen, letting the faucet run, just to hear something move. The envelope lay on the counter, still accusing. If I filed it before the wedding, everything would stop. The trust, the transfer, the arrangement, all of it. But I'd also lose her. Maybe not immediately, but piece by piece, like memory fades from a sick parent's face. I leaned against the fridge and stared at the floor, then whispered, I don't need to be invited to change everything. The wine glass from dinner sat in the sink, empty, but unbroken. They sat me 3 rows back. I counted, not out of habit, but out of insult. 3 rows behind Susan, 3 rows behind the woman who hadn't changed Lily's diapers, but had somehow changed her dress. The rehearsal was more of a performance. Coordinated laughs, blush-colored scripts, champagne flutes that clicked like polite threats. Susan wore ivory. I wore navy. She blended in with the bridal party. I matched the shadows. At the toast, Caleb's father tapped his glass and passed the mic to Susan. Of course he did. She stood like a statue sculpted in grace, not bone. Today, in honor of our Lily, we're launching a scholarship fund, the Lily Calder Future Foundation. She beamed. Applause burst like confetti. My hands didn't move. Lily blinked. Her smile froze, then twitched. Not a wince, not quite, but something smaller, like a protest swallowed before it formed. I'd heard that fund name before, on a line item, right beneath the one that covered the dress. Marianne leaned over, her breath soft against my ear. That's not a gift, she said. That's a leash. She was right, because you don't build a foundation under someone, unless you plan to build on top of them too. After dinner, I walked past Susan in the hallway. She was holding court with bridesmaids, laughing too loud, touching arms like she'd known them forever. She didn't see me, or maybe she did, but I kept walking. Past the powder room, past the orchid table, to Lily's suite. I stood there for a moment, then slid the folder under the door. No knock, no message, just the envelope. The same one that held David's clause, the line that could unspool everything before the first I do. I added a yellow post-it. 4 words, handwritten. That this is still yours. Outside, the air felt different. Not lighter, not freer, but honest. But honest. The hotel valet offered to call me a car. I shook my head. I'll walk. The sidewalk hummed beneath my flats. My purse felt heavy, lighter than guilt, but heavier than regret. Inside it, no RSVP, no invitation, no seat assignment. Still, I had delivered something, not a threat, not a rescue, a mirror, and now it was up to her to look. The hotel lights blurred behind me, like a chandelier you turn your back on, still, bright, but losing meaning with every step. Midnight wasn't made for magic, it was made for clarity. That hour when dresses hang limp over chairs, champagne dulls, and even liars stop pretending to be generous. Lily sat cross-legged on the hotel carpet, hairpinned, face bare, envelope trembling slightly in her lap. She read Clause 13 like it was written in fire. Not ink. External influence equals void. She didn't cry, didn't flinch. Just stared, like the girl who used to line up her dolls by height and announce which ones were allowed to speak. A knock. Sharp, soft. She folded the paper fast, too fast, and slipped it under a cushion. Coming. Susan stood in the doorway with the confidence of someone who believed they had already won. Everything okay, she chirped, her voice too light for the hour, her eyes too alert. Lily nodded. Just once. Couldn't sleep, she whispered. Susan's gaze drifted to the untouched bed, then back to Lily's face. Big day tomorrow. Just try to get some rest. Then she leaned in and kissed her cheek like a seal on a contract, and left. Lily didn't move for a long time. She just sat, staring at the framed photo on the dresser, her and David, her first bike, missing tooth, streamers on the handlebars. He was crouched behind her, arms open, letting go, letting go. She touched the glass. Her hand trembled harder this time. She didn't sleep, not really. The hours passed in fragments. Light under the door, hum of the minibar, faint laughter from the floor above. Just before sunrise, she turned on the lamp and typed, "Breakfast alone." Sent it to me. No punctuation, just an opening. We met at a diner that smelled like butter and burned coffee. No photographers, no planners, just 2 women and a chipped formica table. She didn't wear makeup. I didn't wear expectations. The waitress poured our cups without asking. But coffee was bad. The silence worse. Then Lily asked, "Why now?" I looked at her, really looked. She hadn't grown into me, but she hadn't grown out of herself either. "Because," I said quietly, "you still get to choose." She didn't argue, didn't agree, just reached into her bag and tapped the envelope. Once, twice, like she was testing its weight. Or its promise. The check came, she paid, and walked out without hugging me. But she took the envelope, and that was more than enough. That night, while I folded laundry at home, mismatched socks, a towel that still smelled faintly of sunscreen, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "You are no longer welcome at the ceremony. No greeting. No name. No signature. Just another boundary drawn too late, too loud, too clean." I stared at the message, didn't reply, just reached for the yellow post-it still stuck to the table's edge. The words, "This is still yours," and thoughts, "Some gifts don't come in boxes, they come in choices, and some midnights aren't for sleeping, they're for waking up." People say blood is thicker, but no one remembers who bled the longest. The return gift bag was left on my porch. No note, no driver, just soft pink tissue peeking out like it had nothing to apologize for. Inside was the dress I bought her, ivory satin with cap sleeves and a train that whispered, not shouted, still folded, still perfect, still unworn, like it had been waiting for someone to earn it. I didn't cry, I just brought it inside, laid it across the bed, and sat at the foot of the mattress like a guest in my own history. Then I reached for the old photo album. Not the curated one, not the Pinterest baby book with milestones and stickers, the real one. The one with fingerprints and bent corners, mustard stains, and one Polaroid with jelly on the edge. 12 photos, 12 years. One for every candle I lit, every fever I cooled, every morning she screamed no, and I showed up anyway. I found the one from age 10, chickenpox week. She'd curled into me on the couch with cold compresses and Disney movies, her forehead hot, her eyes glazed. I'd cancelled work, missed a deadline, made soup from scratch. Susan hadn't called, hadn't shown up, hadn't asked. I wrote a caption beneath that photo in my tight, small handwriting, "Your fever." Age 10, she never showed up. I slipped the 12 into a leather-bound mini brown, soft, worn, like a secret kept too long. On the first page I wrote, "The days you forgot," no signature, no plea, just truth. The kind you don't frame, the kind you deliver. That evening, I drove back to the hotel. The valet offered to park me. I waved him off. I walked in through the service entrance. No lipstick, no posture, no applause. Outside Lily's suite, I hesitated only once, then slid the album under the door. No knock, no text, no name. Just. The truth. I was halfway down the hallway when I heard it, the unmistakable click of a lock. Susan's heels. She opened the door, bent down, picked it up. She turned the album over once, then twice. Didn't open it, just tossed it on a side table beside a bowl of sugared almonds, set aside like a menu or a minibar. Snack. My chest didn't rise, didn't fall. I just turned the corner and kept walking. But later, Lily found it. Her eyes were puffy, her fingers unsure. She didn't read it all at once. She opened the album slowly, like it might bite. She lingered on the first page, then the fourth, then the eighth. When she reached the chickenpox photo, something caught in her breath. A tear fell. Then another. Not the kind you wipe, the kind you let happen. She didn't run to me, didn't call, didn't suddenly become my daughter again. But before she zipped up her bouquet box, she tucked the album inside. Between the peonies and the panic. And that was enough, because sometimes the flowers they carry down the aisle aren't for show, they're for survival. Weddings are supposed to begin things. This one was about ending silence. I wasn't there, no corsage, no aisle-side row, no camera-ready smile, just the echo of my own decision, humming in my chest like a song that had ended but left the room buzzing. At the front of the chapel, Susan stood tall in silver heels, her arm linked with Lily's. Should have felt maternal. It looked like PR. Caleb grinned at the altar like a man closing a deal. His father didn't smile at all. He watched with the stillness of a man who doesn't clap. He signs, documents, checks, contracts, not love. Lily walked slowly, bouquet tight in her grip, every step careful, balanced. You could almost believe she was floating, but I knew what that walk really was. I'd taught it to her, the choreography of holding yourself together in front of people who'd prefer you in pieces. She reached the front, the officiant smiled, the string quartet stopped, and the chapel sighed. Lily turned to Caleb, adjusted the mic, and opened her mouth, but the words caught. She looked down, the photo album pressed against her hip like a secret. Inside the bouquet box, hidden but present, 12 memories, 12 truths, one fever that still burned. She cleared her throat, once, then twice, then looked up. Before I continue, she turned to the guests, to the pews filled with faces expecting choreography, not confession. There's someone I need to speak to. Susan froze, the smile cracked just slightly, like a hairline fracture in a porcelain mug. Lily didn't look at her. She stepped off the altar, past the first row, past the orchestra pit of curated lives and legacy. Donations. And walked out the back. The sunlight hit her like a verdict, not cruel, not soft. Just honest. I was standing by my car. I hadn't driven off yet. COULDN, single quotes T. Not until I knew she'd made it through. She walked toward me, still holding the bouquet. One petal fell with each step like breadcrumbs. She stopped, close enough to speak, far enough to still choose. Then she said it, not loud, not angry, just real. You were never invisible. Her voice cracked. I just wasn't ready to see. She reached into the bouquet box, pulled out the album. Held it like a vow. No priest had written, then smiled, the kind that doesn't rise to the cheeks, just softens the eyes. I'm not canceling the wedding, she said. I'm just rewriting the terms. Behind her, the chapel doors stayed closed. The music didn't restart. No one followed. No one dared. And for the first time since the invites were mailed, I realized she wasn't being claimed. She was arriving because sometimes The walk down the aisle isn't about who's waiting at the end, it's about who you refuse to leave behind. The guest room was empty. The bride was not. We sat on the hood of my car like teenagers who didn't know better, except we knew too much. Her veil was gone. My shoes were off, and the chapel doors stayed closed behind us, like they understood. They were no longer needed. The wind moved softly between us. Not a question, not a demand. Just breath, just permission. Lily spoke first. Her voice didn't tremble this time. I don't know if I'll still marry him, she said, but I won't do it for them. I didn't answer right away. I just watched the way her fingers gripped the bouquet box in her lap the same way she used to hold onto my hand when she was 5 and didn't want to go into the dentist's office. Eventually, I said, you don't need to prove anything, just know what's yours. The air between us settled into something sacred, not peace, not finality, but recognition. She didn't cry, neither did I. We just sat, while somewhere, behind us, a machine unraveled. Inside the chapel, Susan was pacing. The pearl clasp on her purse popped open and refused to close again. She asked the planner where the champagne had gone. Caleb's father made a call, not loud, not urgent, just for words to his lawyer. Paused the prenup paperwork. Lily stood, not rushed, not radiant. Just decided. She walked barefoot back across the gravel. Bouquet box in one hand, album tucked underneath like armor. And when she re-entered the chapel, the room did not erupt. It inhaled, like the breath you take when the doctor says your name in the waiting room. She walked straight to Caleb, didn't ask for music, didn't wait for applause. Just held out the bouquet. I need time, she said. Not a contract. Behind her, Susan's shoulders fell by half an inch. The first sign of collapse doesn't always sound like a crash. Sometimes, it's silence refusing to follow your cue. Caleb blinked, but didn't argue. His hands stayed by his sides. He looked like a man realizing the deal was never his to seal. He'd just been invited to hold the pen. She stepped back. Not from him. From the version of herself that had been packaged and mailed out months ago. Returned to sender. I watched from the hallway. Still outside the frame, but not outside her world. Not anymore. The guests began to drift out in confused waves. Pearls clutched, murmurs traded like gossip wine. A toddler dropped a muff. No one picked it up. The aisle that had once meant arrival now looked like an escape route, and just before I turned to leave, before the elevator door shut with a whisper, I heard it. All that money, Caleb's father muttered, staring at the petals scattered on the marble floor. Wasted. But some petals aren't dropped, they're shed. Some dresses aren't worn, they're outgrown. And some weddings aren't for beginnings, they're for endings that finally make room for choice. There were flowers, food, music, but no bride. Just fallout. The string quartet played like nothing had happened, like violin strings weren't fraying and chairs weren't half empty. The cake stood untouched, towering, ornate, icing smooth as denial. No one dared slice it. Half the guests left early. The other half stayed too long. Caleb stood near the gift table, one hand in his pocket, the other gently turning a card over and over, not reading it, just folding the edge like he needed something to press against. His tie was loosened. His smile was gone. His certainty misplaced. I didn't go inside. Didn't need to. The architecture of performance had already collapsed, and I'd been its scaffolding long enough. I stood by the roses, the kind with no scent, and waited for my cue to leave. But she found me first. Susan. Clicking across the stone path in heels too high for truth. Her voice was tight, controlled, weaponized with restraint. You've poisoned her, she hissed. Eyes locked on mine like a courtroom closing statement. I didn't flinch, didn't rise, just tilted my head. You made her choose, I said calmly, by trying to erase me. The silence that followed was so sharp, I thought for a moment it had drawn blood. Then Marianne appeared, quiet as a whisper, hands folded, presence unshaken. She picked truth, she said gently. That's not poison. Susan didn't reply. She just blinked twice, then turned and walked off without looking back. Watched her leave the way you watch a plane you didn't board, not with regret, but with relief. I hadn't won. There was no winner, only air. Finally, air. I walked away from the venue with the same heels I'd worn too. David's funeral scuffed, simple, honest. The clouds were breaking now, not dramatically, just enough to cast long, forgiving shadows across the grass. At home, I lit a candle for David. Same holder, same smell, sandalwood, and something sweeter I could never name. I let the flame steady before opening the old wooden box on the shelf marked in faded pen, for Lily, when she's ready. Inside was a note, her drawings, a ticket stub from the zoo she barely remembered, a lock of hair from her first haircut, soft, fine, stubborn, and a necklace tiny, twisted slightly from years of waiting. I touched the chain, felt its warmth before the flame could reach it, and whispered, "She's almost ready, love," because sometimes the reception isn't where people gather, it's where they finally leave. And sometimes the gift isn't what's given, it's what's finally opened. She didn't get the corsage or the walk down the aisle, but she got something better, a seat at the table, without begging for it. 1 week later, our kitchen smelled like toast and turmeric, no planners, no seating charts, just 2 mugs, mine chipped, hers pink, and silence that didn't ache, just existed. Lily buttered her toast like she was smoothing over something she didn't want to say too fast. Then, soft, "You raised me," and I forgot that mattered. I didn't correct her, didn't remind her I hadn't just raised her. I'd stayed through every fever, fallout, and field trip. Instead, I said, "You don't have to remember every moment, just the ones that made you feel loved." She blinked, held my gaze longer than she used to, then nodded, not with apology, with return. Later that afternoon, she opened her laptop. The keys clicked like small promises, applications, transcripts, old essays she once buried under bridal catalogs and Caleb's opinions. She wasn't running, she was remembering who she was before she was picked. Susan's final text came at 4:22 p.m. 4 words, "You'll regret this choice." Lily read it, then, without ceremony, deleted it. No tears, no fury. Just delete. Like removing a nail from a wall that held a frame that never really fit. That night, I opened my email, scrolled all the way down to the RSVP, the one I was never supposed to reply to, the one addressed to Rachel, guest of Lily. I hovered for a moment, then clicked trash, let the page refresh, and felt the smallest breath move through my chest like a bird that had finally found an open window. The next morning, Lily dug into the garden bed. The sun was high, her knees were dirty. The world was quiet. She planted 3 rose bushes in a curved row near the porch. On one, a small tag fluttered in the breeze, handwritten. Simple. Double quotes for Rachel. I didn't cry, but I did go still. The kind of still that only happens when grief takes a seat beside grace and neither speaks first. I sat on the porch swing, let the coffee go cold in my hands, and whispered, "I wasn't the mother of the bride." I paused, let the words settle. I was something harder, a breath, the woman who stayed, because some flowers don't need bouquets, they need roots, and some women don't need titles, they just need the truth to stop asking for permission. The RSVP email sat in my inbox like a bruise, no one named, unread, unclicked, unwanted. This morning, I deleted it, not out of anger, not revenge, just peace. Lily's laughter floated in from the garden, real this time. Not careful, not calibrated. I stayed in the doorway, watched her press soil around the rose bush with her bare hands ungloved, unhurried. A tiny wooden tag dangled from one branch. It read, "For Rachel." She didn't see me watching, didn't need to. Some acknowledgments don't arrive as applause. Some arrive in dirt, sweat, and names spelled correctly. I turned off the porch light, lit a second candle beside David's, the scent mixed in the air. Sandalwood and lavender, memory and permission. And I whispered to no one in particular, I wasn't the mother of the bride. I touched the tag again. I was something harder. Then I smiled, not wide, not performative, just enough, because this time, I didn't stay to be chosen. I stayed to be remembered.